Okay, here we are behind Mr. Frank Salter's falling down pre-Civil War duplex, it looks like, on the maps, the later maps. And the 1885 map shows there was something from this edge of the house that you see all the way back to the property line here. And the door would have opened out right about this tree, which leaves very little room to probe because that's all cemented over. Which brings me back over to this side. I figured, well, I better continue probing what I can. And over on this side we hit what appears to be a rock wall. Loaded with rocks in the middle of it. I found a seam somewhere along the line and probed about 4 feet down and came up with what looked like lime on the end of my probe. And sure enough, in the pile here, there's a bit of lime, which is always a good indicator that something got buried that was stinky, and they wanted to make sure it didn't stink. Also, other good signs here are shards, a couple of window weights, some bones. Bones are always a good sign of a possible privy site. Nothing real identifiable as to age, but this one is from London, and it's a very odd shape, kind of a corset waist almost. I suspect it was part of a baby bottle or maybe something else, because it's awful thick for a baby bottle. And part of what looks like a planter pot. So we're only a couple of feet down at the most, and at this point we're just trying to get below the rocks and into some glass layer, hopefully. Okay, down at about the 4-foot level where my probe originally was sending me. And we have now discovered a pre-Civil War pontiled medicine vial, unembossed, but the paper-thin flared lip is in perfect shape. At least it appears in the field, and it appears undamaged after 160 years buried, probably 1850s, somewhere in there. Also, one of the things that I've discovered in most pontil era pits are these funny shaped oil lamp chimneys. Very plain, very unadorned. Some are fatter than others, but they're all the basic, plain, rather steep chimney tops. I believe they were for sperm whale oil lamps, because I only find them in the oldest of pits. And here again is a large jar, probably a preserve jar, with a pontil mark, an open pontil, which by the way is on the vial. It's an open pontil, which is the earliest type of pontil. Later years, late 50s, early 60s, they had the improved iron pontil. Although they still use the pontil rod on larger vessels up and through the 1860s, as late as the late 60s, early 70s. So this was no indicator by itself that I was pre-Civil War period. But having found this lovely little vial, I can now officially state we're in a pre-Civil War pit. Yay. Okay, end of day one. Here we are, looking over the edge of the hole, and we have brought in one of the sides, and the wall is more defined, more clearly defined, and it's pretty good size. And so far, I have no reason to believe it's anything but a privy. And for the finds of day one, we have 3 vials, 1 puff, and 2 round 60s bottles, and a flat unembossed medicine. I guess the only real crier in the group is this bad boy here, iron pontiled S.O. Richardson's bitters. S.O. Richardson's bitters. Ask me how many I've dug whole, and I can say 0 still. And also we dug up some yellowware, always a sure sign of a 1860s or earlier pit. Whenever you dig up any of this stuff, and it looks like a possible old slop jar. Some drinking glasses that were busted, and some beautifully pontiled apothecary jars. So I'm having to assume somebody connected to a pharmacy lived here. Otherwise you usually don't see these large, I mean that's huge. That's a huge apothecary jar. That's not your consumer take-home size. So anyway, giving it up for day one, and gonna come back early in the morning and finish her out. Okay, arrived here about 6:30, and it's almost 10, and as you can see I've progressed to the bucketing out stage, where I'm using a little 4-foot step ladder, 5-foot step ladder, and a bucket on a rope. Essentials. You never know how deep you're going. This one's going about 7-8 feet at this point. And the probe shows at least another 3 or 4 feet, which I hate jamming into the hole, and you know there's stuff there. And so far, not a lot to show for it. A lot of good pieces. And one nice old fruit jar, A stone from Philadelphia, and a plain extract bottle. Tons and tons of bones. If I had a bottle for every bone, I'd be done. Okay, end of day 2. We're at the 8-foot level. Seems like we've bottomed out somewhat, but there could be more. So we'll be back tomorrow. Got a few goodies, got to get them home and washed up. See what we got. I know we got a big mountain of dirt back here. Got to go back in there tomorrow. Okay, here we are, day 3. The bottom of my hole. That doesn't sound right. Here we are, day 3, at the bottom of the privy. And we have what we call an in situ feature, or bottle. And if you can't see it very clearly, it's right there. And it's in the almost the very bottom layer, where I have found a scroll flask right up against the wall right about there, and 2 other of these whiskey cylinders, 3-piece molds. One was an emerald green, one was a plain green, and another one's kind of a olive amber. So I got 3 different colored ones so far. 2 were larger and 1 was smaller. This one looks like it might be slightly smaller, similar to the one that I'd found earlier. So we're going to gently give her a wiggle, and it feels whole. The mud doesn't want to let her go. Oh, it's a large one. And what color do we have? We have sort of a regular wine-colored greenish color. Now, some of these say patent on the shoulders. So far I haven't found one that says Squanto on it. But anyway, it's a fresh one. 1850s, early 1860s. Very cool. Well, these were some of the keepers from the first pit at the Salter dig site. Out of 4 holes, this first one was probably the best one, in my opinion. These 4 cylinders were actually at the very bottom of the pit. I got down about 7 foot and it seemed like that was the bottom, except for this one corner, and I kept kind of poking around, and sure as heck, these 4 cylinders plus a scroll flask that I'll video here in just a second all came out of the same corner, about a foot deeper. So it always pays to stab around a little bit, you know, with a screwdriver or a shovel, what have you, you know, to see if there's like a false bottom. I've heard of false bottoms before, but I can't really vouch for the validity of that. In my experience, it's just sort of like another minor clay layer or whatever cap. But anyway, these 4 guys came out. They're all smooth base, but they have the little nipple on the end, and they're different colors somewhat. These 2 on this end are a little bit pretty much the same. This one, and I'll use this one for the example, is a great green color. Nice foresty green. Darker than your average like wine bottle or whatever. Just real pretty. And it's got a really pretty crude looking base on it. A couple of the other ones are more crude than this, but boy, you just gotta love that deep forest green color. It's almost like a JSP malt color green, you know, and nice funky applied tops. Some of my most favorite unembossed bottles there. You know, aside from a scroll flask, which is coming up, all of these were unembossed, but I've kept them for 10 years. You know, it's like, again, what's not to like, other than they're not pontiled, but the scroll is. Yep. So I'm just going to pause it real quick and bring you right back. And these were the remainders out of that first hole that I've hung on to. Surprisingly enough, at the very bottom among those cylinders was this scroll flask. There was also one that was broken with the side edge busted out in the picture. You can't really see it, but this one came out in pretty good shape. And it's got an iron pontil. You can barely make it out. And it's considered a rare one because it's a 5-pointed star instead of the usual 6 or 8 point. I think it's like a 5 and 5, and then 6 and 5, something like that. Anyway, it's considered rare, just because of the number of star points, which really doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but whatever. And then this Radway bottle, entered in according to Act of Congress. Nice pontil, nice big crack from the shoulder to the to the base. That's why I never got it real clean, because I didn't want to force the issue. You know what I mean? Sad, but you know. The coolest bottle that came out whole was not this next one, J.R. Rowand. I guess they had a counterfeiter, Roland. Apparently it was pretty popular, because they seem to be common, open pontiled or not, out of Philadelphia. Just a sweet little bottle, nice rolled lip. Love it. And then, of course, I can't dig up a cobalt blue Harrison's ink. Oh no, it's a Harrison's Colombian perfumery. Smooth base. Came out with all these pontiled guys. Really crudely bust off. They didn't even grind it, they just busted it off. Must have had a fancy lead dispenser top or something. I doubt if it was an atomizer. I'm sure it was before them. Now, the coolest bottles, I'd never dug a Thompson's Eye Water before. Not even a 1890s one. And here I dig up two of them. Dr. Thompson's Eye Water, New London, Connecticut. They spell out Connecticut. Nice open pontil, nice rolled lip. Everything's sweet about it. And then right next to it, out comes its cousin, Dr. Thompson's Eye Water from Bridgeport, Connecticut abbreviated. And the bonus is it's got a perfect flared lip. Now, so far I have found these listed with a rolled lip, and this other one listed with both a rolled and a flared lip, but not this one with just a flared lip. And it's nice open pontiled, as you can see. So I don't know the story on that one. Seems to be an oddball, and especially with a perfect flared lip. So that was a fun dig. That one was that first one in the yard, and it's a tiny yard, so it only took me minutes to probe out 3 holes back there. The fourth hole was interesting because they had already started demolition on the house, and I dug up a pontil utilitarian bottle, not a true puff, but it was thin as a light bulb nonetheless, and right next to it was a broken, what looked like a double eagle flask, and had me boo-hooing on my sleeve in the video. Anyway, that's it for hole number 1. Hole number 2 coming up. Well, here we are at about 4-foot level, and I don't know how long I've been digging. About an hour and a half, I think. And so far, a little pile of 1890s guys to show for it. On the left, all the unembossed. And starting about where the insulator is. Well, actually just a little to the right of that. A couple of Atwoods, Dr. Pitchers. But the first embossed one to come out was this bad little boy. This is a Missouri, what the heck is it? I gotta pull it apart to read it here. Missouri, Kansas, and Texas Railway Employees Hospital Association, Sedalia, Missouri. That's what it says. Looks to be turn of the century. And then we have a couple of criers. I think the base goes to that broken pickle on the left, and a broken pickle on the right that's embossed near the bottom. Squire Ungi or something like that. Very strange. Peptenzine and a Singer sewing machine. Got a couple feet left to go. Oh yeah, and that little barrel mustard. It's a very crude lip on it. It looks 1860s. And that little ink seemed to be older than the rest. Fun, fun, fun. Well, okay, this was the only remaining keeper that I have hung on to from the second hole, a nice little igloo ink. For some reason, I just have a real affection for these things. Didn't seem to dig many of them out west when I was digging. And the other keeper was the Katy Railroad bottle. I dug up a small few, like 3 or 4, and eventually sold those to railroad fans. And would have kept the green cathedral, whatever it was, pickles, olives, who knows what it was, but boy, that was obviously a late throw, because everything in this hole was 1890s and newer. This might have actually been a late throw as well. You don't see a lot of these in 1890s pits. But it does have a rather refined lip grinding, you know. They usually, on the earlier ones, just left them alone. So anyway, that was pit number 2. Back again at the Salter farm, circa 1854 or earlier. We dug privy number 1, pre-Civil War, under these pile of stones. Then privy number 2, back just this side of the tarp, right about in there. And then we probed out what feels like privy number 3. So far we've dug the oldest and the newest, I believe. Hopefully this one will take us to the 60s and 70s. Keeping my fingers crossed. You never know. Well, I've been digging about 20 minutes and looks like a bottle with embossing on the side facing me. No indented panel, so maybe it's an oldie. Maybe it's even whole. Who knows? Day 2, back at the Salter farm, and privy number 3, 1860s, 70s so far. A couple of pontiled bases, and half a dozen whole bottles to show for my efforts from day 1. Yesterday we had a good amount of rain drop on us in a short period of time, so I had to tarp it over and wait for today. Today looks just as crappy, but hopefully they say no rain until tomorrow. So hopefully we'll have this puppy dug out in an hour, filled in another one, and be done with it. Well, fresh out of the hole is this bad boy. I don't even know what it is yet. I know it's embossed, and it looks pretty whole. No pontil, but it's an early hinge mold, and I can't wipe it off and videotape at the same time. I'm thinking it's an India Chocolagawuga, something like that. Get back to you. Well, just by its shape, I guessed it right. Osgood's India Chocolagu. Chalagu. I guess I'm pronouncing that right. New York. It does have what I thought was a burst bubble on the back, but it looks like it's just a little sliver or ding, and some flea nibbles on the lip. Where are they? There they are. Pretty minor in my book. Should clean up nicely. I just splashed a little water on it. Cleaned up this good already. That's the first bottle out of the hole today. Nearing the bottom. Very close to pontil age. So that's early 60s. Yay. Well, I've heard of barrel privies before. I've never really been able to definitely define one or say that I've dug one. But this one looks about as close as they get. Circular, about 4 feet in diameter, and as you can maybe see, the wood lining I don't know, kind of hard to see the wood now. It was easier when it was 3 feet deeper before I brought down the bottom, or the sides rather, brought up the bottom. But you can sort of see it, and you can take my word for it. It's wood lined, round, something different. And that's the end of it. 2.5 hours later. It was about 9 feet deep. Now it's about 7 foot deep. Pit number 3. These were the last of the keepers as well. That amber Dimmitt's flask bitters, 25-cent bitters, would have been a real sweet keeper. Of course, it had to come out broken. The India Colagog, or Cola, like ague, oh God. Yeah, just try to pronounce that. Chocolaga Laga Huga. I like that better. Osgood's. You know, a nice early hinge mold. Didn't miss the pontil by much. Funky lip. Yeah, shoot. And what I thought was a chip on the back was actually a burst bubble. And then this William Kaiser and Son, druggist. This is a real scarce one. They were not in business long at all. And real tough. It's the only one I've ever dug, and it's the only one I've ever seen. Slightly turning purple. In perfect shape. Yeah, a nice local, tough one to find. Kaiser and Son. I think this one dates from the early 80s. I can't remember. I should have looked it up before I videoed. I've done a complete write-up on all of the Hannibal pharmacies that were ever available that I could find. And there were a bunch of them. So anyway, that's it for the Salter digs. The fourth hole really basically was, you know, one utilitarian pontiled bottle and the other was a broken eagle flask, probably a double eagle. And it looked like it was a well, and the next day I came back and the demo guys had pretty much destroyed it. So no bottles to show from that one because I never seem to hang on to those unembossed ones, even if they're pontiled, unless there's something real interesting, color or wonkiness. So there you have it. It was a fun dig. Alrighty, back at the Frank Salter's demolition lot, circa 1850s. And I dug up around that tree a few test holes, probe holes, a little bit of trash here and there, figuring it was a duplex, 3 privies on the other side. There should be 1 at least on this side. And sure as heck, we have come across a stone liner, and the first shard out of it was a pontiled broken base to a umbrella ink bottle. And it's almost 7 o'clock at night, so it's probably hard to see. But there is a stone lining, semicircular, if not circular, so far. And some shards of a water pitcher. A couple of bones. And we're only down about 2 feet. So, signs are good. I'm going to dig for a little bit tonight. See if I can't dig something whole or get to a use layer. There's a lot of bricks and rubble in this 2 feet, but just below it seems to be pieces. We're hoping for whole pieces. Pieces that aren't in pieces. Does that make any sense? No. Anyway. Alrighty. Back here fresh and early. Monday, September 22nd. Feels like October already. But anyway, here we are at what I'm starting to think is a well. Half a dozen bottles came out at this depth already. Nothing good, but all whole, all 1860s. So, we're keeping our fingers crossed, hoping for something good at the bottom. It's got me wondering if there is a privy on this side. Where might it be? Okay, so I have to ask, how is it that the delicate pontil puff on the left, thin as a light bulb, can come out whole, and the beautiful eagle flask is busted? Always happens. Almost always happens. I don't get it. One of those mysteries of life. Well, as you can hear by the digger, I just finished up this hole just in the right amount of time. Talk about beating the digger to the hole. Yeah. This is about as close as you can cut it.